like, what is happening right now? Jill was just laughing for no reason. All right, we're live. Okay. We're here. Give me a second.
We're live. We're not live.
We are live. We're sometimes live.
Is it kind of live?
We're here. Hello, everyone. Welcome to. No, we're not live-ish, guys. We're live. Welcome. Really live. We're really live.
Please be serious.
Okay. Come on, guys. We're all adults here. Welcome to. Guys, I have to apologise for everything that's going to happen in the next half an hour in advance. Welcome to episode 3 of HR Leaders Live, the show where we discuss the future of work with today's most innovative and successful people leaders. My name's Chris Rainey, co-founder of HRD Leaders and host of the HR Leaders podcast. On today's show, we're going to be talking about candidate experience, how to define, improve and optimize it. As always, I'm joined by Matt Burns, Chief HR Officer over at YUSK. How you doing, Matt?
It's Wednesday. Things are good.
You're over the hump. It's fine. And Jill's back this week. How you doing, Jill?
I am doing fantastic. I'm happy to be back. I'm here in the not quite snowstorm of the century on the East Coast that everyone's talking about. And I'm sorry I wasn't here last week, but I was absolutely loving my mom opportunity. I joined my son at an art museum. And I have to tell you, chaperoning with my kid, even for those...
Jill, we've lost your audio. Jill, we've lost your audio.
Well, I was also on this field trip, so I can talk about it if you want.
Jill, we've lost your audio. Jill, you back?
No. Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're back.
Yep. Excellent. Today is going to be Special Technology Day.
How not to use technology by Jill Katz.
How not to use it. So did you get some or all or none?
We missed. Start again. You couldn't join us because you had an opportunity and then we lost you. Okay.
Well, welcome back. I wanted to do it twice. I was with my son this past week. I had the opportunity, or as I call it, the mom-opportunity, to go as a chaperone to his school class play, and it was an absolutely incredible experience. So I was personally really touched by how many of our community and viewers commented on LinkedIn about doing things as a mom or a dad or any kind of caregiver, and I appreciated that support tremendously. So thank you.
Oh, good to have you back.
Thank you.
Oh, you need to trademark that mom opportunity, I think.
You should trademark it. If anyone else uses it, I'm going to know where it came from.
Cool. Well, look, today we have a special guest, William Tincup. How you doing, William?
I'm doing well.
Thank you for joining us. You've definitely won the award for the best hair and glasses on the show.
Yeah.
So
that's it. Drops mic, walks away.
No problem. William's the president of recruitingdaily.com. He's also a writer, speaker, advisor, investor. Written over 200 articles, HR articles, and spoken at over 200 HR conferences. And the last one I'm very jealous of. You've actually recorded over 1,000 HR podcasts. So it's going to take me a while to catch up, but yeah.
You're doing fine.
Well, welcome to the show, William. Let's kick things off with what is candidate experience? We'll start with you, William.
I think, because I'm Catholic, I tend to think you got to get sex, politics, religion. I just want to get all of them in there real quick. No, really, because I'm Catholic, I think in procession terms. The procession of what a candidate goes through, how you want them to feel, what you want them to think, how you want them to act, how you want them to behave, what do you want them to smell, like all of that stuff can be manufactured and should be manufactured, and it should be a symphonic kind of a thing that happens where we think carefully and thoughtfully about everything that happens for a candidate. If you really want to think about candidate experience, you actually need to go and look at customer experience, which is something that's happened in retail and hospitality for at least 200 years now. They understand what it is to be a customer. At any of your favorite restaurants, they know exactly what you're going to go through, and they've manufactured this process of of what you go through. So why it's like haphazard or happenstance for candidates is kind of, it's a little arcane. It's a little beyond kind of comprehension, but it shouldn't be. We should as we recruit people, we should think of them as customers, and we should think of them as what is the actual experience that we want them to go through, and how great of an experience do we want to create for them.
Fantastic. Jill, Matt?
I think that William did a great job outlining it. When I think about candidate experience, I think what is new or interesting in today's market is that we are now admitting or openly talking about the fact that candidate experience is an emotional journey. When people decide that they are going to become a candidate, or if people aren't even sure that they're going to be a candidate, from the moment they start to engage or research through the entire interview process, and then in receiving feedback and an offer or not, there is a journey. It is an emotional journey. We're learning today that it includes a lot of talking, a lot of learning, a lot of sharing. And so I think that in any kind of journey, we as companies or leaders need to partner up with candidates so that the experience is a positive one. And I would add, I love what William said, likening candidates to customers, because not only should we be thinking that way, but in some businesses, particularly in retail, in fact, our candidates are our customers.
Sure.
So I think I love that point.
Well, William, we share a shared heritage in that our Catholicism colors our vision going forward. How it affects me is I have a deeply ingrained guilt that,
Yes.
that makes me have a high amount of empathy for both the customer and the employee experience. And I think that you hit the nail on the head when you talk about it's all parts of the experience. It's the sights, it's the sounds, it's the feelings, it's the experiences. And we spend so much time curating those for the customer. And we seem to shortchange the employee experience. And I think at the expense of the company's success. And where I think about this in the context of is communication. And we spend a lot of time crafting almost two messages, one for the customer, one for the employee. And I think as you move forward, that becomes less and less appropriate and less authentic. Customers want to know that you're treating the employees with respect, and employees want to know that you're treating customers with respect. So
Great.
I think as we see the merging of marketing and human resources moving forward as far as their strategies are concerned, I think this customer experience, employee experience piece is just, we're going to hear more and more and more about it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree with everything you guys have said. They're so intertwined now. There is no really distinction from one another. I think it's more of a mental block from businesses just to get over that and understand it's actually one in the same. And you should be using all of these amazing, as you said, over 200 years companies have been doing this. So it's not like they have to reinvent the wheel. They can just now apply that on in their process as well. And I think so. Moving on to the question then of how do you guys feel we can improve the experience then? The candidate experience.
I'll start. I think, I'm always shocked when you ask recruiters, and not to blame recruiters or HR, but just if you're ever with a large group of recruiters, ask them how many of them have applied to their own jobs, to jobs on their own site. So going through the career page or going through Indeed, clicking through and getting into the career site, then going through the ATS process. How many recruiters have actually done that? The number will astound you how low it is. And so just go through as they say in Silicon Valley, either eat your own garbage or drink your own champagne, whatever. But actually go through your own process. That'd be one place to start, is to go through your own process and start looking at areas of friction. What's actually holding me back? Why does it take this long? Why is the assessment, 3 hours long? Whatever the bid is, because there's all kinds of things that you'll find along the way that you'll then go, why is this here? And I had actually a person a couple weeks ago that was with Oracle was telling me about Taleo's process. And he goes, you know why Taleo's process is so arduous? And I said, no, because there's one box that administrators can check where they can get a diversity, they can get a report. that if they click that box on the back end, it makes the entire application process hideous. But if they unclick that, then the process is really, really actually pretty refined. But it's only because they want to print out one report once a year that they make thousands of candidates go through a gauntlet of bad experiences. And it's stuff like that as recruiters and HR, we first have to go through our own process.
Yeah. I saw some research before the show saying that 70% of companies don't know how long it takes to go through their recruitment process.
The answer is too long.
Which I thought was crazy. And
we had a discussion last week about the ATS and how it's gone to efficiency at the expense of humanity. And I think, to touch on what Williams just mentioned, I think, when I look at an ATS system today, or for those who aren't familiar with the acronym, applicant tracking system, what we use to manage the hiring process, if you look at the feature sheet of all those forms, the target audience is the recruiter.
Sure.
So we will make your life more efficient. We will reduce the amount of work. What they advertise is we will reduce the amount of human interaction you have because that slows you down. So they actually advertise and sell you on the fact that they're trying to remove the humanity from the experience. So I think when I went through the process of selecting ATS, I was asking vendors, tell me a bit about how the experience is for the candidate. And in a lot of cases, they didn't have the answer to that question because they're not prepared to answer that question. And William, I know you're a very prolific advisor when it comes to technology companies. I'm sure a lot of what you're talking about with these companies is think about it from the perspective of the candidate, because that ultimately helps the organization in the long run.
Yeah, a company out of Melbourne really freaked me out one time because I asked them this question, and they're named Vervo, and I am an advisor, but really it was what they said that kind of freaked me out. That's what I want to talk about. Is they successful entrepreneurs, both had already made a ton of money, and their hardest issue that they dealt with was hiring, kind of like the greenhouse founders. And they said, "Why don't we interview everybody?" And I'm on the phone with it. I'm like, "What?" Because why don't we interview everybody? I'm like, well. And I couldn't have a good answer for him because most of it exactly is what you're saying. It's a funnel of how do we get down to a small number of people to then go deep with. And they said, we don't like that. We're going to interview everyone. We're going to put everyone into the same scenarios. We're going to put everyone through something so every candidate has a chance. And I found it fascinating to think about. Like, that's letting every candidate know that, hey, you might not get the job, but you'll at least have a fighting chance of getting the job, as opposed to being screened out by behavioral assessments or, personality assessments or whatever. So it's different approach, but it's just kind of fascinating. Anyhow, I probably interrupted what Chris was going to say.
Oh, no. I was going to say the same thing. I think one of the things that I've seen is if the fairness piece comes up a lot, people want to know, companies in a lot of cases don't even come back to people and let them know. They may go through like quite a few different steps of the recruitment process, and which they've invested hours and hours of their time into, and then the company just doesn't reply at all. And then exactly. And something that's come a lot is the fairness part. And they're not going to recommend your company. They're not going to have good words to say about your organization if they go through that process as well. So that's something I think companies need to think about as well.
I would say that there are three things that strike me as very, very important tips or things to consider to improve the candidate experience. And I think, Chris, you're touching on it, which is, again, it's sort of a change to thinking about just this one-way conversation that there used to be, where the company is the big one in charge, and the candidates or the customers are getting from and having to accept what they get from the company. And today it is much more of a conversation where two sides are selecting one another. And so the company really does need to engage the candidate as a customer, as a person, knowing that the experience is going to matter. And as I've sort of done my reading and attended some workshops, there were three things that stood out to me. One was the career resources and making sure that they work. And it is unbelievable. The ATS is on the backside. So that is the side that is supporting and interfacing with the people in a company. But what the candidate is experiencing and what the candidate's technical journey includes, particularly in today's day and age, is so important. And I read that 80% of candidates decide if they're going to apply to a job before they've even spoken to a person at the company. And 20% of candidates say that if they've had any kind of tech issue, they have trouble uploading their resume, they can't really track their status, they will never apply again. And 50% of candidates are talking on Glassdoor or LinkedIn or Facebook about their candidate experience. So there is a conversation happening regardless, and it's either a conversation that is supportive, neutral, or negative. And so whether there are candidates that are being selected or not, that's really important. So that's the first one. The second one is simple, stupid to me, but it's mobile friendly.
Mm-hmm. I don't think that's stupid at all.
It's almost an obvious today, but 90% of people are doing job research or job application through their mobile device. So to have any kind of interface that isn't mobile friendly isn't friendly.
Right. Well, Jill, I would broaden that out. First of all, I believe in mobile or responsive design and mobile friendly, but I think it's also in a way it's meeting the candidates where they are. Which gets to a recruiter process. If I'm a recruiter that loves to leave voicemails, or a recruiter that leans heavily on email, and the candidates have changed and they want text messages, they want to text back and forth, then I got to meet the candidate where they are. So I think it's, for me, I think it's if and again, you might have candidates that want to meet you on desktop. Great. Meet you on an iPad. Great. Meet you on text. Like, we've got to be flexible to meet candidates where they are. I love what you said about letting them know where they are in the process. That idea of like FedEx, of you're at this stage, or Domino's Pizza does the same thing, where they literally.
They do, and it's actually very, very helpful. I learned that from my sister-in-law. I've never seen. You can actually see how far your cheese melted.
The little circle, right? The fact that I know exactly what you guys are talking about, I almost don't want to agree, but I've used it on, and it tells you jokes while you're waiting for the pizza. And I feel bad for even knowing that, but it's true. The app.
I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed, but
no. We don't need to be embarrassed, because that could be about an Amazon Prime delivery.
It's true. One click delivery. One click Amazon. That actually is dangerous for me. I accidentally ordered £1,000 TV.
You should stop taking
through one click Amazon, thinking that it was going into the basket, and then the next day it came to the house, and I was like, "Oh, I'm in trouble."
No more Ambien for you. That's what that is.
Pardon?
No more Ambien for you. That's what that's about.
I kept it though. I kept it. So.
Did you have your mom call Amazon the next day and get it returned? Or?
No, my wife. I had to explain to my wife why we just bought £1,000 TV, but I was like, well, I need it for the gaming room. So.
Sure.
I wish I could tell you how often I tell my husband, "Oh, I don't think I realized I pressed that button."
I was thinking about it. I thought I put it on a shopping list. I can't believe. You know what? We'll figure it out. I'm not sure. One thing I did want to add about candidates, though, and it's research that I've been doing recently, is candidates are forcing recruiters to change in a way that recruiters aren't comfortable with, because they're asking 3 fundamental questions that are HR questions. So the questions are, and in no particular order, what's next, which is an internal mobility question. Second is, how are you going to train me, which is a training and development question. And the third is, how you're going to reward me or recognize me or praise me. And again, these aren't in order, but the fact that people under 30, they come to an interview with those questions. Like, imagine, 10 years ago, we don't have to go back that far. Imagine 10 years ago walking into an interview going, all right, so I do the job for about 9 months, 12 months. I'm successful. That's fantastic. What's next? The recruiter would have just looked at you blankly like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Because what's next for me is to get you an offer letter, and then get you to accept it, and then get you into the onboarding. And then I'm not sure we'll ever speak again, But candidates are fundamentally changing recruiting. and pushing recruiting further into marketing, further in HR, and HR further into recruiting, which is very interesting.
That was one of the questions I was going to ask, because bosses and managers, they're all held accountable within the organization, but it seems like the recruiters aren't held accountable for the candidate experience. Do you think they should be? And how can we keep them accountable? Because many organizations use so many different recruiters, and I'm pretty sure they're not they're not managing
my
the
organization, we do hold them accountable. So
you do? Great.
Yeah. So the first 90 days turnover is a metric that's tied to talent acquisition in our organization. And then any exit interviews that have to occur in the first 90 days, talent acquisition does them. I want them to hear directly from the candidate why they're leaving in the first 90 days.
Love that.
If in that process, the candidate raises a concern that, frankly, the talent acquisition specialist is ill-equipped to handle, like it's a harassment question or it's a treatment question, then we refer that, of course, to a business partner or somebody in employee relations. But I want to reinforce the accountability of, if you're selling somebody on a job and there's a misalignment in some cases, which does happen. I mean, recruiters are trying to close requisitions. They're trying to move on. They have a large, volume of things they're working on. You have to make sure that the feedback that you're providing to the candidate is not misaligned with the reality. So we spend a lot of time talking about that, and that's why we hold them accountable for that first 90 days. And to be fair, it's had a dramatic impact. So even in the 90 days that we applied this, we went from 80% retention in the first 90 days up to 92% in less than 90 days, because we put talent acquisition on point when it comes to managing that relationship.
What about the experience, Matt? Are you familiar with the experience, the actual employee experience before you get to that stage that your candidates are taking with each of the recruiters that you're using?
Yeah, so what we do is we've set up a process whereby we survey candidates at multiple times throughout their first 6 months within the organization. So we hit them, of course, when they're joining the organization. How was the experience? How did we treat you? Was it fast? And then their first, 2 weeks, how was your onboarding? How was your initial training? And then 30 days, and then 60 days, and then 90 days. And we do that for a couple of reasons. One, it's a process question for me. I want to know if we have breakdowns in our process, where exactly it's happening. So if you're satisfied, dissatisfied, now I know exactly where to spend my time and my attention and where to focus the efforts. And we can have a really good quantitative discussion with our stakeholders, because at that point in the first 90 days, HR certainly has a role to play, but so does the hiring manager, so does other parts of the business. We want to make sure that it's a shared accountability. So we use the reporting as an impetus to kind of illuminate when we have issues, and then we dig into those issues as they pop up.
I would, Matt, if you don't mind, I would expand that out to a year. And the reason I would suggest that is, in the first year, both parties are making they're coming to the conclusion, did I make the right decision? So the company's doing that, and so is the individual. And so if you broaden out or make that spectrum just even go further, just a little bit further than 90 days, just keep checking in with them all the way to that first year, that anniversary date. I think you'll find some other breakpoints in there, but you're also they're still trying to make the decision, even after 90 days, that I make the right decision by coming on board. And they might like everything, which is one thing, but they're still in their mind, did I make the right career decision? And so I would extend onboarding for 12 months, for the whole first year.
I think that's an interesting call out. And Matt, I love your process. I think that's brilliant. I do want to thank you for coming to the show today.
And being a human being. It
was good. And I think one of the things I heard you say that was a differentiator is that in that first short period of time, it's the recruiter who's held accountable for the turnover. And William, I think your idea is interesting, but I think after the first short period of time, whether it's 90 days or whatever is appropriate for that organization, the accountability may shift closer to the people leader or the HR business partner. Because at that point, if it's longer than that, then there's something happening maybe inside the business or the relationship with the leader that could be impacting. But I think that's a great idea. And I would add, Chris, that one of the things our recruiters are doing that I think is interesting and new, and I learned this by the brilliant Jeff Soto from Macy's, who gave me some good insights today, so I appreciate that. our recruiters are now taking on really a training and partnership role with the hiring managers, which is great. And so when we really think about it, and I thought this was such an interesting point, recruiters are hiring people every single day. It's part of what they do. But a hiring manager might hire a handful of people in a given year.
Sure.
And so it's not a skill set that they may necessarily have the opportunity to practice that often. And so some of the coaching that the recruiters can now provide to the people leaders around what the journey feels like and around what is expected from the candidate may help the people leader to make the process better. And I think a tactical example of that is aligning upfront on how many times does this person have to come back? You know, you want them to meet these 35 people, but how many of those 35 people are actually decision makers? And the answer is probably 3.
Right.
And so I think that's another really interesting thing to think about, which is once you have the candidate in the door, how can the recruiting team, the business partner team, the people leader team make sure the experience is not exhaustive?
Mm-hmm.
So I would add that.
Chris, you asked a simple question about how do you make it better, and Joe and Matt both have kind of given great examples of how do you make the process better, is how do you get alignment between recruiters and hiring managers.
Yeah.
So often a hiring manager won't know what they want until they see it. And so they send the recruiters off on this journey through, Nottingham Forest to find the candidate, to bring the candidate back and then go, nope, that one's too short, or that one's this, or it doesn't work like that. So if you really want the candidate experience, one element of the candidate experience is you just get them to collaborate better. Like, let's not be in a rush to go and put something out in front of our career site or wherever we're going to place our ads. Let's actually talk. What are you trying to fill? Not, is it the last person that did the job? Okay, well then let's deconstruct that. Was it they were doing 3 people's jobs? We need to actually, what do you really want? And recruiters, when they know without a doubt what you want, they can get it. It's their failure point generally is when they're dealing with hiring managers that don't know what they want. And so I think if you want the candidate experience to be better, one of the things you have to do is you have to fix that collaboration between candidate, manager, and recruiter.
Got a question on YouTube from Gabriel. Said completely agree on how we need to keep our candidates engaged, but also to hear the candidates complain about lack of knowledge and why they didn't get the job. And is there any thoughts on how to give meaningful feedback to people that haven't got the job? Mm-hmm. How do you guys currently do it?
I think that
is it an email? Is it a star? I've seen companies use star ratings. There's loads of different ways. How do you guys let people know that they didn't get the job?
This is a tough question.
Yeah, this one's really hard, and I don't know. And thank you, Gabriel, for trying to stump us.
I've recently seen star ratings. Like, you haven't got a job and they give you like a star rating, and then they're gonna give you a generic feedback of, baby, you should try this next time. I've seen that on a few different sites.
You sure that wasn't Domino's?
No, but that seems to be and again, I think I mentioned it earlier as well. Most companies just don't give anyone any feedback.
Well, I think. Go ahead.
I would say that it was actually, Gabriel was a good transition to the third point I was going to make earlier, which is communicating expectations. I think that candidates today, they're used to being able to put their hands on information. That's how we all live our lives right now. Anything we want to know, we can go know it now. And then when you enter into this job search process and you can't get feedback and you can't get an answer and you can't get a status, it's very frustrating and upsetting. And so, up front, I think it's important to contract with the candidate to let them know what to expect. Let them know you're interviewing for this job. The hiring manager is a person who travels frequently. And so I think our process might take 6 weeks.
Right.
Letting people know what they're going to hear.
Yeah.
at Macy's, we have a lot of different ways that we get back to people. People that apply for jobs through our job site that are not executive level jobs, we have a rule of thumb that everyone is responded to within a period of maximum 30 days. So that everyone will hear something. And in that case, it is generally a standard response because we're getting several hundred thousand.
Yeah.
You know. For executives, however, we actually really do, and I think it's important to try to provide really honest and constructive feedback. Mm-hmm. Now, I would love to hear both from William and Matt there, because I think from the business perspective, this can get sticky. So I think it's great to give feedback as to why a person wasn't selected for the job that you're talking about. But sometimes the reason you selected them might be something that you think could be a derailer for them throughout their career.
Well,
and that's I don't think that's our job.
Yeah, venture capitalists rarely say no to apply. What they do is they say, you don't have this. And so I think the feedback to executives isn't about their bad breath or cursing or, slandering or sexual harassment claims in the past. You don't have to go negative per se. But what I like about VCs is they won't tell you that they won't invest. They'll just say, you don't have a fully fleshed out executive team, so go get that. When you come back with that, they'll say, well, your product doesn't have 200 MRR. Well, you come back when you have that. Like, they'll never say no. They'll just keep saying what you don't have. Now, okay, so that's executives, and I think that I don't think you go negative. I don't think you gain anything by telling people that they have bad teeth, for instance. I do think that chatbots. So I'll flip this around to technology for a second. I do believe chatbots now, we're at the age where some things can be answered by chatbots. Like, a minimum of a BS in computer science is required for the job. A chatbot can actually analyze a resume and see that you don't have a BS in computer science and give that feedback to the candidate in real time without human interaction. So chatbots can give feedback, and as a society, we're kind of okay with chatbots. I mean, our kids are interacting with Alexa and Siri on a daily basis, and so are we. So I don't, it's not flying car stuff, and it's not displacing recruiting, but I do believe that chatbots can do some of the easier parts of candidate feedback.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I completely agree with you on that one, and I've seen many HR leaders now using chatbots more and more now. A few of my last podcast, a lot of the HR leaders are now putting chatbots in place to take away some of that. Taking away some of the administrative tasks of having a human being reply back to a very simple question every single time. And again, it's only going to, and also it's very cost effective as well. It doesn't cost a lot to implement a chatbot. It's very simple. I've got one on our website. It costs £10 a month. It's called ManyChat. If anyone wants to use it, it can do exactly what you've just discussed for £10 a month. ManyChat. Yep. So yeah, and we found it.
That's really a nice ad. Was that an ad?
That was an ad. Even though, I should set up an affiliate link first. And then
very well done.
I just heard you say something about gaining £10 a month, and I'm not interested.
No, not that, Jill. Not that. I'm glad you mentioned the technology piece as well, because I think more and more now that's going to come into it. I think I am amazed, for example, how good LinkedIn has their process of applying for a job on LinkedIn, and when the fact that you can literally press one button and it turns your LinkedIn profile into a CV, and you can automatically apply. Even other job sites now, it gives you the option: use your LinkedIn page as your CV. And now companies are accepting that rather than having to write a whole CV or attach it or put a cover letter and stuff like that. So I think more and more now technology is definitely going to come into play with that one as well. So is there any other comments for anyone? Let me have a look now. We've got another question on here. So Melissa said, in order to make candidates feel comfortable during the initial interview process, how would you frame the interview questions to engage the candidate versus them feeling like an interrogation?
Well,
This is part of my script. So those folks who've interviewed with me in the past, they can vouch for this. I actually open every interview by saying, this is an interview. You're interviewing us. We're interviewing you. This is not an interrogation. And then laughs and everyone then relaxes. I think it's so important to put the candidate at ease for a couple of reasons. One, the candidate at ease is going to give you their best answers, which is what you want to hear. There's nothing more disappointing than hearing from someone that you may have screened out in a process that they didn't put their best foot forward because they were nervous or because they haven't interviewed in some time. So I really try and solicit the best from the individual by putting them at ease and ask them questions that they can dive into. So I think that's kind of the first point. The second point I would say around that is you have to give them reassurances that they have some power in this process. So I try and reinforce that on a regular basis, which is to say, this is a two-way street. I mean, I will tell you everything you need to know about the organization, the good, the bad, the ugly, because there's all three of that in every organization. And then you tell me the good, the bad, and the ugly about where you have fits. And let's just see if we can line those things up. And if we come at this from the same perspective, we're going to have a lot of great success. And I think sometimes, whether it's recruiters or hiring managers, can sometimes get afraid about telling candidates about maybe some of the things they don't want to share. And I think that's a mistake because they're going to find out anyway. You might as well tell them.
Yeah.
Or you give a bunch of their time and your time through this process. So we are
it actually comes from a relatively dark place, because when people first started talking about employer brand a couple of years ago, they made they really kind of wanted to whitewash things and take away the bad. And an employer brand, if it's done well, it both attracts talent and repels talent simultaneously. And so there's no company that's got it perfect. There's no company that's got it all right. There's bad managers everywhere. There's executives that make mistakes, strategies that are flawed. Like, every company has these problems, but somehow we want to try and make it perfect, like a Disney movie. When people apply, it's like we only want to talk about the good things. I think the better recruiters do what Matt suggests. They go into a situation. They say, "Listen, you're talented. That's why you're here. We want you to be here. So I'm going to tell you the truth. Okay, whether or not you might hear the truth and then get scared and never come back, but I'm going to tell you the truth nonetheless. And I want your questions of us. I want you the hardest questions that you can think of, and I'm going to answer them honestly. And I'm not going to answer them the way that you want to hear them. I'm going to answer them as honestly as I can. And if you respect that, great. If you don't, that's great as well." Mm-hmm. So I think first of all, the people that manage employer brand need to take a step back, take a Xanax, and stop trying to make things perfect. That shit drives me crazy. Yeah. Because it's just not true. I mean, none of it's true. Actually, at any company, it's just lies. And the more perfect you try to portray your firm, the more you're lying.
Yeah, it's about managing expectations, right?
Right.
Same again, you can use the exact same thing with your customers. How you manage expectations of your customers, you can use exactly the same thing. If I sell my customer a product, and then for me, I'm always trying to undersell and actually over deliver in most cases to get customer delight, not the other way around.
Like your favorite restaurant, high-end restaurant, there's a dessert on there, and underneath the dessert it says, "This dessert takes 45 minutes to prepare." Okay, so I know that if I want that dessert, I'm going to order it when I'm ordering my entree, because it's going to take them a while to put that together.
That dessert is a chocolate lava cake.
I'll have one of those.
All right, well, we've got one more question.
I meant to order that before we started the webcast.
I've got one more question, guys, before we wrap up from James. James just said, have you seen the use of assessments impact the candidate experience? For example, generic assessments versus assessments tailored to the role. For example, you could have someone do a coding challenge before an interview to make sure that they've got the technical skills. Have you seen that affect the interview process or the candidate experience?
I'll go first, but I'd like to hear everyone else. As long as it's not extraneous, if you explain why they're doing something. So I'm about to ask you a personality assessment about safety. You're a forklift operator. I care about safety. I want to understand that. Take this assessment. It'll only take 20 minutes. Now, I've managed your expectations. I've told you why it's important. And if you don't want to do it, or if somehow that upsets you, then you're not the right candidate for us anyhow.
Yeah.
And where people make mistakes with assessments in general is either they don't explain the need, they don't explain why they're doing it, because they don't feel like they have to, which again is that power that Jill talked about, that we're not the ones that have all the power. We were never the ones that had all the power. But for a while, HR and recruiter thought that the candidates are beneath us. We have the power and they have to bend to our will. Mm-hmm. And I think she did a really eloquent job of really kind of displacing that theory. So it's just being honest with the person about the assessment and how long it'll take, why it's important, and why it's there. And I think if we do a good job of explaining those bits, then I think candidates are more understanding.
I agree with William. I think, and I particularly agree with your point that, in the example of the chairlift operator, if that person doesn't want to take a safety assessment, you've gotten great information right there in the moment. I would use.
That means they smoke a lot of weed and they're not safe. That's what that means.
On behalf of HR Leaders Live, I'd like to say that we are not here to promote Xanax, weed. I don't know what else.
Or anything else that was said there.
Or at least not while you're viewing the show.
Maybe you should during the show. It's an
me,
argument to be made there as well.
Might make me more interesting. I don't know. I will share a personal story about assessments that may be apropos. I was in an interview process with a company and I was asked to take a personality assessment. And that was an opportunity for me.
That's already fun.
Did you fail it?
No, Jill rewrote it and sent it back to them.
I may or may not have corrected it, and then used it as an opportunity to give them feedback. But what I would say that I thought was really great is I entered into it as a candidate with what I consider to be the growth mindset. And so I wasn't afraid of it. In fact, it was an opportunity for me to get more knowledge and information about myself. And so the question that I asked when they said to me, you're going to take this assessment was, that's terrific. Will I also have the opportunity to see those results so that I can learn from them?
Nice.
So I did take the assessment. I did break it. And I did get the results back. And,
what they said, yes, you've got a personality. Is that what
and that's when they called Matt Burns for the job.
Yeah. Turns out you don't work well with others. Anywho.
Yeah, exactly. Here's my answer, and you're not going to like it, is that it depends. So I think we try and operate in this binary thinking where either assessments are good or they're bad. And the reality is they're both. So I like assessments for a couple of reasons. One, I like assessments because it provides a quantifiable measure in the hiring process that we can anchor ourselves to and use it as a discussion point. And I find that very valuable, specifically when talking with hiring managers and helping them understand, the balance between gut instinct and also quantifiable results. Because, the reality is most people you talk to think they have great instincts and have a great read on people. And the reality is most are terrible at it.
Sure.
So having a quantifiable measure allows you to anchor that feedback to something. At the same time, before everyone goes out and buys a bunch of assessments, you can go too far the other way as well. And assessments can screen out really good people that don't fit the paradigm you've created for it. So you have to be flexible to be looking at a qualitative measure, which is the interview process and the conversation you're going to have with an individual, and a quantifiable measure, so that for the folks that are lawyers in the audience and folks that want that quantifiable measure, you have both. And I think the combination of those two is really, really powerful. And I agree with William. As long as it's targeted to the role and not just let me run you through a psychometric assessment for 4 hours so I can tell you about your childhood, then I think you're in a really good place.
Well, I think we should end it on that note, guys.
Data-driven decisions. There you go. Done.
Well, look, thank you very much for joining us. Matt, Jill, William, it was a pleasure as always. Thank you for everyone for your questions online that tuned in. Really appreciate it. As always, leave a comment and let us know what topic you'd like us to talk about next week. You know, we really want to make sure that we cater to you guys. That's the whole reason we created the show in the first place. If you're interested in learning more about us, you can head over to hrdealers.com/live and check out our profiles and what we're doing. All of the videos are uploaded there. Apart from that, we look forward to seeing you all next week, same time.
Same time, same place.
Same time, same place. Have a great week.
Bye.